Most people think power is won on the battlefield. They're wrong. The most dangerous man in the room never raises his voice, never throws a punch, never makes a threat you can see coming. He just waits, watches, and by the time you realize what's happening, it's already over. His name was Niccolò Machiavelli, and over 500 years ago, he uncovered something so ruthless, so precise that kings banned his book. The church called it the work of the devil, and tyrants secretly kept it under their pillows at night. Not because it taught men how to fight, but because it taught them how to win without ever having to. You see, fighting is loud. Fighting is messy. Fighting leaves evidence. But what Machiavelli discovered was something far more sinister, a way to destroy your enemies, dominate any room, and seize power so silently that your opponents applaud you while you're doing it. This strategy has been used by Roman emperors, Renaissance warlords, Cold War intelligence agencies, and today, the most powerful CEOs and politicians on the planet. And most people will go their entire lives never knowing it exists. So if you're ready to see the world the way Machiavelli actually saw it, not the sanitized version they taught you in school, then stay with me. Because what I'm about to show you will change the way you see every relationship, every negotiation, and every power struggle you will ever face. Here's the first thing Machiavelli understood that most people never will. When two people argue, when voices rise, fists hit tables, and sides are drawn, everyone watches the fight. And that's exactly the problem. Because while you're watching the fight, you're not watching the player. This is the illusion of conflict. Human beings are wired for drama. Our egos demand to be seen. Our emotions demand to be heard. When someone challenges us, something primal fires off inside, and before we've even thought it through, we're already reacting, already defending, already in the arena. And the moment you step into the arena, you've already lost a piece of your power. Think about every argument you've ever witnessed. Every public confrontation, every office war, every falling out between friends. What do you remember most? The chaos, the emotion, the spectacle. But here's what no one tells you. Beneath every visible battle, there is a hidden structure, a quiet architecture of power that was built long before the first word was ever spoken in anger. The people at the very top of every system, political, corporate, social, they are almost never the loudest ones in the room. They don't argue. They don't lose their temper in public. They don't need to, because they figured something out early. Every fight carries risk. Every confrontation, no matter how righteous, no matter how justified, costs you something. Energy, reputation, allies, time, and sometimes it costs you everything over a battle that didn't even matter. The strongest players don't avoid conflict because they're weak. They avoid it because they understand something the rest of us don't. That real power was never won in the fight itself. It was won in everything that happened before the fight began. While ordinary people prepare for war, strategic minds prepare the battlefield itself. Lesson 1. Control the environment, not the opponent. Now we get to the first real lesson Machiavelli embedded in his writing, and it's one that most people walk right past without ever seeing it. He never said it this plainly, but the principle is there, buried between every page. The easiest opponent to defeat is one whose choices have already been limited, not forced, not manipulated, not threatened, not limited. There's a critical difference, and that difference is everything. See, when you force someone to do something, they resist. They push back. They tell others. They remember. Force creates friction, and friction creates enemies. But when you limit someone's choices, quietly, invisibly, before they even sit down at the table, they walk straight into the outcome you designed. And they do it believing every step was their own idea. This is what modern behavioral scientists now call choice architecture. The powerful understood it centuries before the term was ever invented. Here's how it works in the real world. Walk into a business negotiation and think about who controls the room, who chose the location, who set the time, who decided where everyone sits, who framed the agenda. These details seem trivial. They're anything but. The person who controls the environment has already decided the range of possible outcomes before a single word of negotiation has been spoken. In workplace politics, it works the same way. The most dangerous operator in any office is rarely the one making the most noise. It's the one who quietly decides who gets invited to which meetings, who controls the flow of information, who shapes what the decision maker hears, and more importantly, what they don't hear. By the time the final call is made, the outcome was locked in long before. And in social dynamics, watch carefully the next time you're in a group. Someone, almost always someone, has set the tone before you arrived. They chose the setting. They shaped the mood. They decided, consciously or not, what kind of interaction this was going to be. Everyone else simply responded to the environment that person built. This is Machiavelli's silent weapon. People spend enormous energy trying to change minds, arguing, persuading, convincing. But the master strategist skips all of that. He doesn't try to change your mind. He builds a world in which your mind, left entirely to itself, arrives exactly where he needs it to be. You feel free. You feel in control. You feel like the decision was yours. It was never yours, as Machiavelli himself understood, and as the most powerful operators in history have practiced ever since. The master strategist rarely pushes people. He simply builds a road they willingly walk. And here's the most unsettling part. You have walked down someone else's road before. We all have. Most of us are doing it right now and don't even know it. But controlling the environment is only the first layer of invisible power. Lesson 2. Let others exhaust themselves. There is a particular kind of power that looks, from the outside, like doing nothing. It is the hardest power to develop, and it is the most devastating power to face. Machiavelli watched it destroy kingdoms. He watched brilliant men, skilled men, well-resourced men collapse not because their enemies were stronger, but because they couldn't control the one thing that mattered most, themselves. Here is the uncomfortable truth that most people will never accept. Emotional people are predictable people, and predictable people are defeatable people. The moment you react, the moment frustration cracks your composure, the moment impatience pushes you to move too soon, the moment ego convinces you that you must respond, you have handed your opponent the most valuable gift in any power struggle. A map of your weaknesses. Think about what anger actually does in a conflict. It narrows your vision. It shortens your time horizon. It makes the immediate feel urgent and the strategic feel distant. When you are angry, you stop thinking about winning. You start thinking about striking. And striking too early, striking from emotion rather than position, is how empires fall. Now think about the person on the other side, the one who stays quiet, the one who absorbs the attack without flinching, who listens more than they speak, who lets the storm pass and then, in the silence afterward, moves. That person didn't win by being stronger. They won by being patient. Look at how this plays out in the real world. In competitive business, some of the most spectacular collapses had nothing to do with the competition outperforming them. They had everything to do with rivals destroying each other, burning resources, burning bridges, burning reputations in a war that the smartest player in the room simply refused to join. While two giants fought over territory, a quieter third party was building the infrastructure that would make both of them irrelevant. In office politics, watch what happens when two colleagues clash openly. They both lose standing. They both become liabilities. They both exhaust political capital on a battle that drains them, while the person who stayed neutral, stayed calm, and stayed useful quietly inherits everything they were fighting over. In social rivalries, the same pattern repeats. The people who escalate, who retaliate, who need to have the last word, they burn themselves down. And the ones who wait, who let time do its work, who never give their opponent the satisfaction of a visible reaction, they are still standing long after the noise fades. Time, Machiavelli understood, is not neutral. Time favors the disciplined. Every moment your opponent spends in emotional chaos is a moment you spend in clarity. Every impulsive move they make is an opportunity you didn't have to manufacture. Every bridge they burn is a door that quietly opens for you. Strategic silence is not weakness. It is not passivity. It is a weapon, and in the right hands, it is more lethal than anything said out loud. The impatient rush toward victory. The strategist waits while others run toward defeat. So the next time someone provokes you, and someone will, before you respond, ask yourself one question. Are you reacting, or are you positioning? Because your answer to that question in that moment will determine everything that follows. And while others are busy fighting visible enemies, another battle unfolds beneath the surface. Lesson 3. Master perception. Let me tell you something that will make you question every interaction you've ever had. People do not respond to reality. They respond to what they believe is real. And there is a difference, a vast, consequential, world-altering difference between the two. Machiavelli understood this with a clarity that disturbed everyone who read him. He didn't moralize about it. He didn't apologize for it. He simply stated what centuries of human behavior had already proven beyond any reasonable doubt. It doesn't matter what you are. It matters what people think you are. This is not cynicism. This is psychology. And the most powerful people who have ever walked this earth built their empires not just on what they did, but on how they were perceived while doing it. Think about reputation. Not the soft, feel-good version of it, but reputation as a strategic instrument. Your reputation arrives in every room before you do. It sits at every table before you take your seat. It answers questions you were never asked. It closes doors and opens them without a single word leaving your mouth. The leaders who changed history understood this viscerally. Napoleon didn't just win battles, he staged them. He understood that how a victory looked to the public was almost as important as the victory itself. Julius Caesar didn't just accumulate power, he curated the story of his power so carefully and so deliberately that the story outlived the man by 2,000 years. These were not accidents. These were strategies. Look at the most successful executives in any industry. The ones at the very top are almost never the most technically skilled people in the room. What separates them is something harder to quantify, but impossible to ignore: a commanding presence, a certainty in how they carry themselves, an image so carefully maintained that people around them begin to behave differently simply because of who they believe they are dealing with. That is perceived authority, and perceived authority produces real compliance. Here is the mechanism at work. When people encounter someone who projects absolute confidence and certainty, someone whose reputation precedes them, whose image signals power, something shifts in their psychology. Doubt shrinks. Resistance softens. The instinct to challenge gives way to the instinct to defer, not because the powerful person demanded it, but because perception created the conditions in which deference felt natural. This is why image management is not vanity. In the hands of a strategic mind, it is architecture. You are building, brick by brick, the version of yourself that the world responds to, shaping behavior, opening doors, neutralizing opposition before any of it reaches the stage of open conflict. And the dark side of this lesson, the part Machiavelli never looked away from, is that perception can be weaponized in reverse. Just as you can build an image that commands respect, you can allow a false image of yourself to persist, one that underestimates you, one that makes you seem smaller, less threatening, less significant than you are. And then, when the moment comes, the gap between what they believed and what you actually are becomes the most devastating weapon of all. History is full of leaders who were dismissed, underestimated, written off. They were patient enough to let the world believe the lie. And then they moved. If perception controls action, then perception controls reality. Master what people believe about you, and you have mastered the battlefield without setting foot on it. But perception alone cannot create lasting power. Lesson 4. Become difficult to oppose. Here is a question most people never think to ask. What if the greatest victory isn't winning the fight, but making the fight not happen? What if the highest form of power isn't dominating your enemies, but becoming someone your enemies quietly decide isn't worth the cost? This is where Machiavelli's thinking cuts deepest, because everything we've covered so far, controlling the environment, outlasting emotional opponents, mastering perception, all of it builds toward this single devastating conclusion. The greatest victories happen when opponents decide fighting isn't worth it. Not because you threatened them, not because you intimidated them, but because you built something so solid, so interconnected, so genuinely valuable, that attacking you became a losing calculation before the first move was ever made. This is strategic deterrence, and it is perhaps the most sophisticated form of power ever conceived. So how do you build it? It starts with competence, real, undeniable, visible competence, not the performance of expertise, the actual thing, because in any environment, professional, social, political, The person who is demonstrably excellent at what they do creates a problem for anyone who wants to move against them. To remove someone truly competent, you have to answer a question that stops most opponents cold. Who replaces them? If that question has no good answer, you are already protected. But competence alone is not enough. Machiavelli was clear about this. The isolated genius is vulnerable. The skilled loner can be picked off. What transforms individual ability into unassailable power is what surrounds it. Build them deliberately. Build them across different circles, different levels, different interests. Not transactional relationships. Those are fragile, and everyone can see through them. Deep alliances built on genuine mutual benefit, on shared investment, on the kind of loyalty that comes from actually delivering for people over time. When you have built a true network of allies, any move against you triggers a calculation your opponent didn't expect. How many people does this affect? How many people will push back? How many fronts does this open? Most opponents won't answer those questions and proceed. The math stops them. Then there is credibility. Your word must mean something. Your judgment must be trusted. Your track record must speak before you do. Credibility is the compound interest of consistent, principled action over time, and once built, it becomes a shield. Because attacking someone with genuine credibility doesn't just cost you the fight. It costs you standing. It makes you look like the aggressor. It turns observers into their defenders. And finally, and this is perhaps the most quietly powerful move of all, create value that others depend on. Become the person who solves problems no one else can solve. Become the connection others need. Become the resource, the knowledge base, the network hub, the trusted advisor that people in your world cannot easily imagine functioning without. When your absence creates a vacuum, your presence becomes untouchable. People rarely attack those who appear prepared, but they never attack those whose removal would cost them something they cannot replace. Think about the great executives who built careers that survived every corporate storm around them. They weren't just talented. They were woven into the fabric of their organizations, indispensable to too many people, trusted by too many stakeholders, connected to too many outcomes. Removing them didn't just create an enemy. It created a crisis. So no one tried. Think about the historical figures who held power not through fear, but through a web of relationships so carefully constructed that the system itself protected them. Kings feared them. Rivals circled them, and then, quietly, moved on to easier targets. This is the fortress Machiavelli had in mind. Not walls, not weapons, not the capacity to survive an assault. The strongest fortress is not the one that survives attack. It is the one nobody chooses to attack. Build your competence. Build your alliances. Build your credibility. Create value so real, so embedded, so necessary, that opposing you stops making sense. And watch how the battlefield empties around you. This brings us to Machiavelli's deepest insight. Machiavelli's ultimate secret. We've come a long way from where most people think this story ends. Most people hear the name Machiavelli and they picture manipulation, ruthlessness, a cold, calculating villain pulling strings from the shadows. And yes, in the wrong hands, everything we've discussed can become exactly that. But here's what those people miss. Here's what gets lost in 5 centuries of misreading one of the most misunderstood minds in human history. Machiavelli was not teaching cruelty. He was teaching foresight. And there is a difference so profound, so fundamental, that it separates every ordinary thinker from every truly powerful one. Listen carefully. Most people react to events. Something happens, a crisis, a conflict, a threat, an opportunity, and they respond. They are, in the truest sense of the word, passengers, carried by the current of events they never saw coming, never shaped, never controlled, always arriving at the scene of something that was already decided. Powerful people shape events, not by being smarter, not by being stronger, but by thinking further ahead, by asking not what is happening, but what will happen, and what can I do now, quietly, invisibly, to ensure that when it does, the outcome already favors me. This is strategic foresight, and it operates on a timeline most people cannot even see. Here is the second half of that same revelation. Most people solve problems. They are proud of this. They wear it as a badge. I'm a problem solver. And problem solving is valuable. It is necessary, but it is fundamentally reactive. It means the problem already exists. It means you're already behind. It means the situation has already cost you something. Time, resources, momentum, opportunity. Powerful people prevent problems. They see the conflict forming 3 moves before it arrives. They quietly reposition before the tension becomes visible. They make the small adjustment now that eliminates the large crisis later. And because the crisis never comes, no one ever sees the move that stopped it. No one gives credit for the disaster that didn't happen. The strategist works in a silence that looks to everyone else like luck. This is Machiavelli's ultimate secret. Not how to win a fight, not how to crush an enemy, not how to seize power through force or fear or spectacle, but how to arrive at the moment of decision having already made it. The true strategist wins before the game appears to start. By the time anyone else realizes a contest is underway, the outcome has already been shaped, in the alliances already built, in the perception already established, in the environment already constructed, in the patience already exercised while others were busy reacting. The victory was decided in the quiet moments no one was watching, in the preparation that looked like stillness, in the positioning that looked like patience, in the influence that looked like friendship, in the foresight that looked like fortune. The battle everyone sees is rarely where the victory was decided. This is the world Machiavelli saw. Not a world of heroes and villains locked in open combat, but a deeper world, a quieter world where the most consequential moves happen long before the curtain rises, where the most powerful people are the ones who shaped the stage, wrote the conditions, and then stepped back, letting everyone else perform in a play they had already scripted. The question Machiavelli leaves every reader with is not, how do I fight better? It is, how far ahead am I thinking? Because the further ahead you think, the less you ever have to fight. The modern world is full of invisible wars. Look around you. Not at the news, not at the noise, not at the arguments happening in public, the conflicts playing out on screens. The visible drama that demands your attention every single day. Look beneath all of that, because beneath every headline, beneath every boardroom conflict, Beneath every social rivalry and political battle and corporate power struggle, there is a quieter war happening, one with no explosions, no declarations, no visible casualties, and most people don't even know they're in it. The modern world does not reward the loudest voice in the room. It does not reward the most aggressive, the most forceful, the most willing to fight. History taught us that lesson over and over, and we keep forgetting it. What the modern world rewards, what it has always rewarded underneath the spectacle, is strategic thinking, the ability to see further, to move quieter, to build deeper, to shape conditions while everyone else is busy reacting to them. Most people are fighting visible enemies. They are arguing with rivals they can name, defending against threats they can see, solving problems that have already arrived. They are brave. They are hardworking. They are earnest. And they are perpetually exhausted, perpetually behind, perpetually wondering why, despite everything they do, the ground never seems to shift in their favor. It's because they are fighting the wrong war. Strategic people are not fighting visible enemies. They are doing something far more powerful and far less obvious. They are shaping invisible conditions, quietly building the alliances that will matter before anyone knows they matter, carefully managing the perceptions that will open doors before those doors are even needed, patiently positioning themselves in the spaces that will become valuable before the crowd arrives. They are not reacting to the world. They are building it. And by the time the visible battle begins, by the time everyone else rushes in, loud and reactive and certain that this is where things will be decided, the strategic mind is already somewhere else, already 3 moves ahead, already watching from a position that was constructed long before the noise started. This is what Machiavelli saw in the courts of Renaissance Italy. This is what he documented in the uncomfortable, brilliant, ruthlessly honest pages that powerful men feared and ordinary men misread. That the world has always been full of invisible wars, and the people who win them are never the ones who fought the hardest. They are the ones who thought the deepest, and that distinction changes everything. Final lesson. And so we arrive at the end of everything Machiavelli was really trying to say. Not the version they warned you about. Not the villain. Not the manipulator. Not the cold architect of cruelty that 5 centuries of misreading turned him into. The real Machiavelli. The one hiding in plain sight between every page he ever wrote. The average person believes winning means defeating others. It is perhaps the most deeply human belief there is, ancient, instinctive, wired into us long before civilization gave us better options. We measure victory by the opponent we overcame. We define strength by the resistance we crushed. We tell stories of battles won, enemies defeated, conflicts survived. And in doing so, we miss the entire point. Machiavelli understood something deeper, something quieter, something that only becomes visible when you stop measuring power by how much force it produces and start measuring it by how little force it requires. The greatest victory is creating circumstances where conflict never becomes necessary. Not winning the war, not dominating the enemy, not even outlasting the opposition, making the war unnecessary in the first place. This is the summit of strategic thinking. This is where foresight, patience, perception, positioning, and the quiet architecture of invisible power all converge into a single, elegant truth. Because think about what conflict actually costs. Every battle, even the ones you win, drains something from you. Every enemy you defeat required energy you will never get back. Every argument won, every rivalry survived, every confrontation navigated. Each one leaves a mark. Each one takes something. The less energy spent fighting, the more energy remains for building. And building is where real power lives. Not in the destruction of what opposes you, but in the construction of something so valuable, so solid, so genuinely significant that opposition quietly becomes irrelevant. The less attention spent on enemies, the more attention remains for growth. And growth compounds, quietly, invisibly, unstoppably, while everyone else is locked in the endless, exhausting cycle of conflict and reaction. The strategic mind is compounding, relationships deepening, reputation expanding, influence spreading, position strengthening, until the gap between them and their opponents is no longer a matter of contest. It is simply a matter of distance. This is the world Machiavelli was pointing toward. Not a darker world, a clearer one. A world seen without illusion, without the comforting stories we tell ourselves about noble battles and worthy fights. Just the clean, honest, quietly devastating truth that the highest form of power was never about force. It was always about making force unnecessary. Anyone can win a battle. Few can win without one. The highest form of power is not crushing resistance. It is making resistance irrelevant. Remember that, because the world is full of fighters. What it has always been short of, what it has always needed and always feared, are the ones who never needed to fight at all. And that is Machiavelli's secret.